You know, when you read this, I mean, I've read it before, it seems to me that if he'd have went ahead and asked the Lord, what must I do?
Right,
You know,
that's right.
and then everything would have been okay, and he wouldn't have ended up killing his brother, but it was his envy. Because God got, you know, respected his brother, but didn't respect him.
So let's apply this to today. Has anything changed? Genesis 4 is like today's newspaper. You preach the gospel to somebody who thinks they're okay with God. They find out from the scriptures you're preaching they're not, and they're angry at you. Cain got mad at Abel. Why? He didn't do anything to Cain. All Abel did was obey. He got mad at Abel. I've seen it over and over the years where someone who comes in and thinks they're okay with God because they're a good person, and then you preach the gospel to them, find out they're a sinner and hopeless if they don't come in humility and repentance and faith to Jesus, and so they realize, I think they're not saved, and they're mad at me. And they're huffy, and their countenance falls. It's the same thing. There's something in the fallen heart of man that is proud and that is stubborn. And one of the jobs of the Holy Spirit in a gospel meeting is to break down that wall of pride until they come and say, I'm sorry, Lord, what must I do to be saved? And if that wall doesn't fall, they'll storm out of that service, mad at the preacher, mad. That church is a bigoted church. That church is... It's the same thing over and over again. His countenance fell. Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking that Cain probably knew, because I would imagine Adam and Eve would have told both boys the story of, we lived in a perfect environment.
I'm sure.
We sinned.
I'm sure.
And we thought we could make garments, but God said that wasn't good enough. It must be a sacrifice.
Yep.
So I think Cain might have known it, but he thought he could probably get his own way to God, as so many have lost mankind. I'll find my own way to God. He'll be pleased certainly with this because it'll be my best.
Well, first of all, he didn't have enough humility to just believe it. That he had instruction on what to bring. And he already had a stubborn streak because I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bring the produce. Right? And then when the produce is not accepted, number two, the stubborn streak appears on his face and he's upset. Because that's the darkness and the stubbornness of the human heart. Guard yourself, folks, against being angry at the truth because it contradicts you. Don't let that happen. That's what Cain did. Barbara.
Well, first of all, I've always had a hard time reconciling. I understand the story. I understand, you know, I'm not disbelieving it, but because Abel was the keeper of the sheep, the appearance is that he is bringing of his handiwork or his whatever, and Cain is bringing of his. So it appears like God accepted one person's handiwork over someone else's, just because his happened to be what he had been commanded to bring. So I've had a hard time, you know, saying, well, but Cain brought what he'd made, well, so did Abel, technically, but I know he didn't make it. But you know what I mean?
Right, he didn't make it.
Him being the keeper of the sheep is kind of a little hiccup.
I see. Well, the difference in the two is the blood. Because the sheep was, of course, a picture of Christ, and the innocent had to die for the guilty to be able to approach. I think it's one thing to keep sheep. I think it's another thing to, if you want to make a difference between the two, to till the ground and to plant and to water and to do whatever you have to do. You kind of feel, I think, more that you had a part in the growth of that plant, because it wouldn't have grown like it did without you. The sheep's going to grow without you. I don't know if that helps.
Well, plus, Abel could have said, just brought the finest of his flock and said, here, God, but he went ahead and the finest he sacrificed to God. He spilled the blood. He didn't just say, well, looky here, you know, and offered his finest work. He realized it had to not only be perfect, but it had to also be slain. Perhaps that's the difference there.
Obviously,
between the two boys.
Obviously, they had been instructed, or they would not have been accountable for being accepted or rejected.
That might have been where Cain's first issue
Yeah, I think it was.
It appeared to be Abel's handiwork, not his own,
Uh-huh.
because Abel was the one who kept the sheep, so maybe that's where his pride started.
Good lesson for us. The person who is unteachable has problems to follow. Cain was unteachable. I think he had a stubborn streak. I think Abel had less of one. They're both fallen creatures, but one obeyed, one did not. Wayne?
The rest of verse 7 should have told Cain there was something wrong, because it said, if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. And that's God talking to him, and he ain't listening.
No. If thou doest not well, verse 7, sin lieth at the door. Verse 7 says, if thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted. All you had to do was obey. All you had to do was bring what I said. It's by my grace, Cain, that I even offered you a way. But no, that wasn't good enough. You had to do your own way. But if thou doest not well, if you continue in this trend you've already started, sin lieth at the door, which means if this thing's going to get worse, because sin that is not fixed and a God that is not approached gets more distant and more grievous later on. Sin, you're going to have a life, a track of sin that you're going to tread down through your life if you don't get this first thing right. Yeah.
Well, I liked what Wayne had said earlier about, at this point, had he even not been all hard and against God, he should have said, well, then what must I do?
Well, that's the point. But
I
he
mean,
didn't.
if somebody told me that that isn't the way to do it, I would think I would, well, what is the way?
He, being often reproved and hardeneth his neck, shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. Because once reproved, a hard heart reproved gets harder. Look at Pharaoh. A hard heart reproved gets harder. So guard your heart, because out of it are the issues of life. And he tells Cain, if you do well, everything's fine. If you don't do well, sin lieth at the door, and you're going to lead a life of wickedness because you couldn't get this right. And so he's going to continue in sin. There's no doubt about it. Verse 8, Cain talked with Abel his brother. It came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him. So here's the first, talk about first things. Here's the first murder in the Bible. That didn't take long, did it? Adam and Eve bear Cain and Abel. Cain slays Abel. That didn't take long. You say to yourself, you know, our society now, we've had so many years to perfect badness that we read about this stuff in the news, but I don't think it was always, I think it was always this way. Read the Old Testament again. I think it was always this way. The first child of the first couple is a murderer. And he's mad at the wrong person. He's unrepentant. He's mad at Abel because Abel did the right thing. People don't like some of us sometimes because we do the right thing and they don't, and they resent it. It's an unnatural human hatred of light. Darkness hates the light. And sometimes it's no deeper than that. You didn't say anything to make them mad. You didn't do anything that would have offended. It's just that darkness hates light. But don't dim the light because darkness is offended. And Abel was obviously accepted. Cain was not. Let's look at verse number 9. The Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? He knows where he is. He's asking Cain. A good interrogator knows what questions to ask to bring the truth out. The Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Now Lord here is in all caps, which means the Hebrew term is Jehovah. You've got Jehovah God talking to Cain, and Cain lies to him. So I guess sin is at the door, isn't it? So he starts with a stubborn streak, hatred of his brother over it, stubborn against God, murders his brother, then lies to God about it, as if God doesn't know, but he lies to God about it. The Lord said unto Cain, verse 9, where is Abel thy brother? He said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? Oh, there's your attitude again. There's your attitude. Am I my brother's keeper? Are you kidding? If you loved your brother like you ought, you shouldn't have to ask that.
You'd be crushed.
If you loved your brother like you ought to love him, you shouldn't have to ask the Lord that. And if you respected God, you wouldn't say that either. Now, I've known people over the years that are mad at God for one thing or another. And then sometimes they get over it, sometimes they don't. I was visiting a house one time, and a girl had a stillborn child. Christian home, had a stillborn child. And I don't pretend to have all the answers for that. When I visited the home, the parents said, just be careful, she's mad at God. Just be careful what you say, she's on edge. You know, I understand, that's gotta be a horrible thing. It's gotta be a horrible thing. But I would like to think our anger or our frustration in life would not be misdirected like that. That's easy to say, but Cain was upset with Abel, and now he's lying to God, and now he's throwing attitude at God. Am I my brother's keeper? There's no way to outrun God. There's no way to out-talk him, out-debate him. And so Cain, I think you're getting to know him a little bit. Not a joy to be around, I would say. And yet, it all happens today. It all happens still. In verse number 10, he said, what hast thou done? That's the Lord's second question. What hast thou done? Because he already knows. The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. You think there's a perfect crime? I don't think so. You think anybody can really say to themselves, well, I got away with it? No, I don't think so. The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. The Lord is the avenger of the helpless. And I wouldn't want to be on the other side of that equation. Verse 11. Now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. All right, a couple things here. Cain is cursed. The ground is cursed. Now, he's a tiller of the ground, but the ground is cursed, and so it will not bring forth like it normally would for someone else. Plus, he's a vagabond, a fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. So there is no rest for Cain, and it's a sign that his life will be spared. The Lord's not going to take his life from him, but he's going to make earthly life a punishment for the rest of his life. Cain said unto the Lord in 13, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth. From thy face shall I be hid. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. It shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. So he's afraid now that the news is going to spread, because murder is not on the front page every night. This first one, the only one so far, and the rest of the children, Adam and Eve are going to keep bearing children, and that's in the next chapter. And so he said, well, those that see me are going to want to slay me. And so Cain found out it wasn't worth it. It really isn't. These momentary impulses that people have, you say, you know, I'm just going to throw caution to the wind and dive in. Yeah, well, that's foolishness. It's never worth it to walk away from God. The fact that he brought of the produce of his hands seemed like, well, you know, I'm just going to do this. Well, how's that working out? You know, there's often a longer price to pay than that momentary rebellious satisfaction we got. And now for slaying his brother, yeah, he regrets that probably now, because the rest of his life's going to be affected negatively. so many Christians think that, well, you know, I've been good for so long, I'm just gonna dive in. Well, there's a longer price to pay than the thrill of diving in. So Cain found that out. He said, it's greater than I can bear. So what's the Lord gonna do? Cain said, everyone, at the end of verse 14, everyone that findeth me shall slay me. Boy, he's living the life of gusto now, isn't he? All that thing, all that stubbornness, that wickedness he wanted to do. And you can plug any sin into that equation you want, and there's pleasure in sin for a season, but a season has an end. And when that season is over, the payment begins, and it's always greater than the sin promised. Verse 15, the Lord said unto him, therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. So the Lord's going to protect Cain from avengers. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. Now we don't know what the mark is, but it was obvious enough that, you leave Cain alone. He's already cursed. The ground is cursed. Things don't grow for him like they used to. And he's a vagabond in the earth, and he's a fugitive. And just let him live on his own out there. Just don't take his life. 16, Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden. He left the manifestation of God. I know you can never go out from the presence of the Lord. Christians, some of them to this very day, are trying to outrun God because they know they're on the wrong side of him. So they try to outrun him, but he's wherever you get where you're going, he's there. But I believe that there was a visible manifestation of God in the Edenic area, probably Shekinah glory of some kind. And Cain was conversant with God, according to the text. And when he went, it says, from the presence of the Lord into the land of Nod, he was leaving the visible manifestation of God to go into another part of the country. I looked up Nod, and people, most of them say we don't know where it is now, but it's somewhere in the northeast section above the Gulf. What is that Gulf over there? Suez Canal? No. Can't remember now. I looked it up today.
It's not the Mediterranean, is it?
No. Eden is probably, was somewhere in the Fertile Crescent around Babylon, and where all the rivers meet there in the Fertile Crescent. Nod would be to the east. It's a famous gulf over there. I wish I could remember it. If I said it, you'd know it. But that's where a lot of the wars take place, around that gulf. Persian Gulf. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I had it on the tip of my tongue. All I needed was for you to tell me. 16, Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. Now you can chart this progression of Cain to a common trail of Christians that have decided to backslide today. He doesn't obey God. He brings an attitude. He's got a stubborn streak. He won't correct his mistakes. He mistreats his brother. And what's the remedy when God questions him about it and his conscience is being addressed? Just walk away from it. Just go somewhere else where God isn't.
Are you thinking he was saved or lost?
That's a great question.
I tend to think he was lost because I don't know. I've known.
Well, here's,
Go ahead.
I'm just noticing that there had to have been a significant passage of time
Yes.
for there to be people in Nod
Uh-huh.
and people elsewhere that were gonna kill him. So now my guess is, just a guess obviously, that this is not the first sacrifice they've ever brought to God. that possibly they've been living their lives bringing sacrifices, and this one he decided to do something different.
That is very possible.
So it's possible he was a saved individual who now has strayed, or it's possibly was never saved all along. But with that much passage of time to have people in different, different areas of the grown people, we're not talking teenagers here.
Mhm.
And they all had to have come from Adam and Eve and brothers and sisters and
Right.
nephews and, it was pure blood back then. It's not like it is today where,
Correct,
so the incest is not,
correct, right,
does not play in.
that's right.
But like Barbie said, that takes a long time.
Well, that's why I would think that maybe this wasn't the first time that they had brought
Mhm.
offerings to God.
Mhm.
Part of that though is you don't know where that time is. That time could have been after, the population of the land could have been after he was expelled from God's presence. He might have wandered alone for a generation and then got married when the land was populated.
Well, but I find in 14 it says, and that
Oh, he is
everyone
worried
that
people are
findeth
gonna
me
kill
shall
him.
slay me.
Yeah. He is worried people are gonna kill him.
Yeah.
A fugitive and a vagabond, those words wouldn't have any meaning if there were 4 people on the earth. To
And-
me,
Well,
they wouldn't.
lifespans were very long back then, hundreds of years. So,
I'm sure someone's done the calculations of Adam and Eve and what could be possible.
in chapter 5, you have the line of Seth, from Seth to Noah. But if you look in chapter 5, you say, I'd like to see how long Cain lived. He's not in there. Because chapter 5 is the godly line from Seth, who is the next son born to Adam and Eve. And then you start having lifespans determined, how many kids, how many years after the kids, total years lived, next generation. And you do get into Cain, well, let's look at 17. Cain knew his wife. She conceived and bare Enoch. He builded a city, called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. And unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad, here's some name ideas, folks. Irad begat Mehujael, that one's probably taken. And Mehujael begat Methusael. And I wonder, like people do, they start calling different names. Oh, mess those up. And Methusael begat Lamech, and Lamech took unto him 2 wives. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other Zillah. And Ada bare Jabal. He was the father of such as dwell in tents, such as have cattle. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all that handle the harp and organ. His folks were disappointed. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. The sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said unto his wife, well, he's a murderer right there, if you read it. He's a murderer. He's I think he's the 5th generation from Cain, and he murders somebody right there. Says so.
Oh,
Yeah. Today's newspaper. So what you have is people multiplying, living hundreds of years, and all kinds of kids, kids having kids, multiple generations on earth together, not like today. If you have 5 generations, that's a novelty, take a picture, But back then, you could have much more than that. So how long a time elapsed, we're not told, and how many people populated the area, we're not told. But I love the speculation, I really do. Yes, Wayne?
I looked it up as I always do. It said the word nod in Hebrew means wanderer, exile, or fugitive.
Interesting. Yeah.
It said, but when he finally settled in the land of Nod, he established a community totally detached from God.
Well, I think that's the idea, isn't it?
So,
Yeah.
I was gonna mention too, that, the question on whether or not Cain was saved or not is still, the Bible's pretty silent on that, but, on the other side of it, you know, Abel's mentioned in, chapter 11 of Hebrews, and faith in it talks about how, you know, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous. You know, when he brought it, that was his witness that he was, had
Saved.
by faith been saved, and there's never anything said about Cain having a witness of his salvation. Doesn't mean anything, I guess,
wasn't.
but the fact that Abel was spoken of positively.
By faith, that's Hebrews 11:4. By faith Abel brought a more excellent sacrifice, by the which he witnessed that he was righteous, and his brother, how's that end? And his brother,
Well, it just says, that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh.
I see.
So it doesn't really mention, it just says he brought a more excellent sacrifice than Cain.
Yeah, and he did it by faith, which indicates there had to be some instruction. And by faith, he just honored it.
Right,
Cain,
it probably didn't make any sense to him
that's
to
right,
take his best
the blood,
and kill it for
an innocent
nothing.
animal. So Cain, who didn't have faith in the sacrifice, said, that doesn't make sense, I'm gonna make my own. And so one was of faith, one was of right reason, and it was not accepted. Yeah. So next time you hear that, well, God loves all people, and doesn't matter what you call him, or how you worship, or what you believe, God's not gonna reject anybody. It's just, starting in Genesis, it's not true. And so, if you attend one of those narrow-minded fundamentalist Baptist churches, yay. Cindy, you know where I got that.
Yeah.
Wayne.
Yeah, I know, what is ironic about going down into, verse 24, one of his sons followed in his daddy's footsteps.
Yes. Lamech, 23, said unto his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech. Boy, how'd you like to be talked to like that? Huh? You're the little woman of the house? Hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech. I love this guy, all right?
Yeah.
Hearken unto my speech. Yes, make your own supper. For I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, because he knew that with the mark and all that, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. And Adam knew his wife again. She bare a son, called his name Seth. For God, she said, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. To Seth, and to Seth, to him also there was born a son, called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. And in chapter 5, as we said, this is the book of the generations of Adam, male and female. In verse number 3, Adam lived 130 years, begat a son in his own image after his likeness, called his name Seth. The days of Adam after he begot Seth were 800 years. He begat sons and daughters. There were more, but they're not mentioned because God in the Old Testament is giving you a godly line through which the Redeemer will come. And chapter begins with Seth. At the end of chapter 5, it says Noah was 500 years old. Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So it takes you right up to Noah. And the other Cain is gone. Abel, of course, is gone. Seth is the promised seed. Another miracle birth. Another way that God replaces what Satan destroys. All right, and then takes you through the godly line. So Genesis 5 is not an exhaustive table of who was alive. It's the godly line. So there were many more people populating earth than you see names in Genesis 5. But he's only singling out the line he's going to use to bring you to Messiah. That's what Genesis 5. But look at the lifespans, 800 some years. How many generations could be alive if that was the case?
Wow.
Wow, yes, Wayne.
I mean, I see I believe it, but you read it to people, about, he lived, at 900 years, Methuselah lived 900 years and all that. They always, how could a man live that long? And I thought, well, back then, there probably wasn't as much disease and junk going around as there is today.
That's true. And after the flood, we're not going to get into the whole discussion. After the flood, the lifespans start coming down
Well, the canopy's gone.
because of the sun.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, it was a whole different earth back then, pardon me.
This might be a dumb question, but did Adam and Eve start at one? When they were created?
Christie, you wanna? They would start at 0, or,
Well, I mean, are they
Well,
1 year old, but they're grown?
they were fully grown, I think, right?
Yeah, so,
So, what, thou shalt be 25?
Well, just like he created trees with the appearance of age.
Yeah.
Cause that's nothing to
I just
him.
wonder how do you calculate?
I
age?
think by the way it's worded, they lived so many years, I think they started 0 even though they were fully
I see.
formed. And then they lived after that. Yeah,
Could this chapter be, where it comes back and says Adam knew his wife, could that be like parenthetical, not in the chronological timeline? Because, and it does lead us to believe that there were only the 3 boys until Seth was born, and then the rest, then bore
I
many
think
others.
Seth was next, yeah.
So I'm wondering, and this was like 120 years to begin with, so could this just be, and Seth was born, and then Cain takes off, rather, that kind of gives the time for the people to be there. I don't know.
Neither
It
do I.
just, sometimes you say this is put in parenthetically, because it's not following the timeline, now we're going back to heaven.
Oh, I see what you mean, I see.
Because Adam didn't wait 130 years to have the next son, not have any children between that time.
I would leave that door open. Although she does say, let me look at it,
Oh, I have one more question.
hold on to it.
Yeah, I'm trying.
5:3, Adam lived 130 years, begat a son, his own likeness, after his image, called his name Seth. Days of Adam, after he begot Seth, he begat sons and daughters. After he begat
Mhm.
Seth, it looks like it's in order, but what, that's a lot of time, isn't it?
And my last question is actually even verse 4:1, when Eve said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. I've heard it preached
I know where you're going.
that she even as early as that, because she already knew the prophecy
Mhm,
of Jesus to come, that this could even be
mhm.
Jesus. I've gotten a man from the Lord. And then when Seth was born, I think she thought this might have been Jesus too.
I've heard that said, that she was already privy to a coming Messiah because of sin, and that some say when she says, I've gotten a man from the Lord in verse 1 of chapter 4, she thought maybe Cain immediately was him.
Way
Well,
off.
You way
Way
off.
No, but, you know, listen, the word of the Lord told her that, you know, you're gonna,
The seed of the woman.
the seed of the woman,
3:15.
she's the only woman,
3.
and will bring forth children,
Yes?
and then the serpent will bite the heel and it'll crush the
I'm not
serpent.
saying she couldn't think that. I'm just saying we're not told she thought that, but I'm leaving that door open.
See, I think that she did think that.
Well, okay then.
Well, we're Open Door Bible Church.
There you go, open door, church of the open door.
Everything we follow.
Don't let it hit you on the way out. That is, put that on the sign.
Yeah. I like it.
Everybody happy? Wayne, go ahead.
I
That
always
door's
wondered-
open, Wayne.
Yeah, I ain't saying a word. I always wondered, you know, how many years passed, or where they started before Christ, you know, BC.
Yeah,
And even in, the Bible, it doesn't start counting the years until
No.
it says 1490
Yeah.
BC. And
They-
that's in Leviticus.
you're talking in the margin?
Yeah,
They don't do that in the early chapters, do they?
yeah.
Because there's
not
no
in
way
there.
to know.
Yeah.
There's no way to know. If you have a Thompson Chain Bible, in the margin, you'll have dates I think it's chapter by chapter they do it. But
Well,
you
they
go back
can-
far enough and they don't do that because there's too many variables.
Well, they can date, because history starts to make history, and other people are writing history
That's
down,
true.
so then they can date it. Because, oh, this is happening here, well, this is when King so-and-so.
That's true. All right, summarizing. He started off on the wrong foot, and then he had an attitude. And then he got mad and started lying to the Lord, slew his brother, and tried to get away from God by moving. And you know how many Christians think, if I just don't go to that church anymore, I just don't have to face the Lord? Same thing, it's the same thing, right? I'm just not going back there, so I have to face the Word of God. Well, you know, it doesn't work. So, Cain, a bad example. There's a notorious figure in the Old Testament. Let's continue to pray for Janie. She's home, and the infection is gone. She's just waiting for the incision to heal now, and I think she's doing reasonably well. So let's continue to pray for her, and go ahead.
Maybe we should all send her a card, and she'll be back Sunday before she gets them.
Before she gets them, yes. Yeah, sure. We need to pray for the missionaries that we support, you know, all the general things. There are a number of people that I would like to see again here soon, so just, that's an unspoken. A number of people. I have a prayer list at home on my desk with their names on it, and so I'd like to see them. I'd like to see a bigger Wednesday night crowd, and so I'd like to see that. Anybody else? What have we got to pray for? Anybody? Any unspoken tonight? All right. Thank you very much.